Hello guys! Welcome everyone back to an episode of Mando Monday. This is the series where you guys ask the questions and I, of course, answer them. That could be to do with anything related to Counter-Strike 2, Valve, future upcoming updates, such as CS2's first operation, future updates / addition to the Armory, or maybe it's in regards to returning maps, modes, weapons, or features. If you guys have a question you want a shot at being answered in next week's video, leave it down below of this comment section, any other of my Mando Mondays, as well as my community posts that I put out before the episode normally goes out. This week's episode of Mando Monday is, well, actually on a Monday, which is pretty great, as well as we have some absolute banger questions in regards to new maps, modes with dynamic weather, the devs update cycle, what's coming soon, alongside a bunch more. But before we do so, I want to give a huge thank you to Skin Club for sponsoring today's video. Skin Club is a highly popular case opening platform with a massive collection of cases for you to unbox, giving a fair chance for all players. For those who are 18 years or older, elevate your gaming experience by collecting and upgrading amazing skins through a provably fair system, ensuring a fair chance whether you're unboxing by yourself, competing against other players, or battling bots. Consider the stakes and transform your unwanted baggage into something shiny. Simply select the skin, explore the upgrade options, and move the slider to your preference. Every month, Skin Club features a brand new event packed with cases, exciting giveaways, and points for participating on the platform, which can be spent on the marketplace. There are multiple different payment methods such as crypto, card, or skins. And withdrawing your winnings takes seconds. Head to your profile, select the skin you want, and you'll have it in your inventory. Don't miss out on the 7% deposit bonus. Check out the link in the description below.
Let's roll.
Now, our first question here for today's video starts off very strong, mainly in regards to how CS2 can innovate. This guy says, what other ways do you think CS2 can innovate / benefit from the Source 2 engine? Maybe something like dynamic map hazards. And before we deep dive any further into any theories, my personal opinion, and of course where we ask you guys, I do have a question and one point stemming off this question that I think will actually set a pretty interesting precedent for future Mando Mondays, other commentaries, but also just this question. My question for the devs, but also you guys, is it a question of innovation, or has Valve already made CS hit a peak? And what I mean by that is, has CS2 just peaked the franchise for good? Because what I think it really boils down to is what most players want CS to turn into and want future updates to be like for the Counter-Strike franchise is more into a Call of Duty clone than anything in regards to Counter-Strike prior to CS2. Kind of the type of game where it has a 24/7, 365 battle pass, which that obviously now has come true with the Armory pass. It's now just really about how much the devs actually care about the game in terms of updates, specifically going over content. And with all that being said, in my personal opinion, in some ways, I do believe Counter-Strike kind of just has peaked with CS2. You have a relatively new engine that is still being worked on today. The downside to it is not a whole lot of people know how to use it to make games, make things for something like Counter-Strike, and that's only going to grow as the devs add on more things to help new people kind of get into the scene, and old people know their way around. And aside from skins, players have gotten pretty much everything they've asked for, obviously aside from an anti-cheat, FPS, the dozens of maps, modes, and features from CSGO and prior Counter-Strike titles. Yes, that sounds like a lot, but CS2 graphically anyway has kind of peaked, so too is skins. It's now just about content and, well, the quality of life that Counter-Strike has to offer. Let me know what you guys think down below. Do you think the Counter-Strike franchise has peaked with the release of CS2? The reason I also ask that is I'm kind of looking at Counter-Strike right now, and I'm asking myself is if in 10 years, for an example, will another Counter-Strike game come out? Kind of similar to CSGO's CS2. My answer to that right now is probably not. I think they're just going to base everything now off the Source 2 engine with CS2. Now, to deep dive and answer your question, my answer to this overall is just yes. I do believe Valve and the devs for CS2 are eventually going to add things to the game, similar to your question, where yes, dynamic weather hazards on certain parts of certain maps, or maps that change certain parts of the map, maybe halfway through a deathmatch, halfway through a competitive, wingman, so on and so forth. I think because somewhat like a battle royale, if a certain amount of gas comes into a certain area, you can't be there, kind of limits you to a certain area of the map, which obviously pushes all players there, making gunfights and gameplay more interesting. I think that's possible, but also just very cool. Not to mention, I also think having the wind blow the dust around on Dust 2 would be pretty insane. And this kind of was a rumor for a long time with the release of CS2, kind of the build up to it. But the only problem with features like this, not to mention dynamic weather, is if you look at it overall, Counter-Strike is just not really one of those games. Not to mention the problem this would also interfere with competitive and that aspect of things with the Counter-Strike franchise, which makes me think and have this reason that it won't happen. But if the devs one day did it, I think they could have some sort of toggle in the settings where you could turn it on and off, or maybe only have it for certain modes like deathmatch and not competitive. But I think the problem with this is overall it would just hurt the player's visibility and just kind of hinder the, well, competitive aspect of the Counter-Strike franchise. I think this is a great concept and thought. I just don't know how practical it would be inside CS2. It somewhat goes back to my point where I wonder if CS2 is kind of already peaked. Just Counter-Strike alone, take away the two. I think other ways of innovation for the devs and just Valve overall for the Counter-Strike franchise is just better and more communication from them to the players, which they had for a little while and they kind of, well, lost that, but also just adding more things to the game that players just overall want. But as we go forward in today's video, a common theme you'll see is that the devs really want to spread out and milk the content they've just just drop for as long as possible before releasing anything further to kind of, well, have the hype last? Great question. Let me know what you guys think about this one down below. On to number 2. Our next question up here is from Crappy Wizard. Interesting name. This guy says, comments on newly added gem finishes for the Fever case. For example, prices, looks, rarity issues. It's a great question, and I also gotta say, I love these type of questions where it's kind of just a free ball. You give me one topic, we could talk about it. Just something to think of for future questions. That goes for anybody. So my thoughts and comments on this new case, not to mention just update in general for this new spring launch, is I think the biggest problem with this update just right off the bat is obviously the gems being messed up with the market. And for those who don't really know what was going on, what is going on, and what I'm talking about, essentially when this update dropped with this case, I'm not really sure if Valve messed things up in the back burner, changed things behind the scenes that we didn't really know. But if you were opening a gold and ended up getting some sort of Doppler finish on these obviously old knives, you had a much more likely chance of getting some sort of rare gem, black pearl, sapphire, ruby, than really anything else. And not to mention than any other time before. Aside from this also messing up the market, it made players wonder what could have Valve done behind the scenes that made this happen in the first place, and how can they ensure this won't happen again? I'm not sure about the exact numbers, but it's to the point when this case released, when you compare these finishes on these knives, which are relatively still new, not to mention these are brand new, comparing them to a Chroma 2 case where you could get the gems on the older knives, we're almost at the halfway point with the new knives and old knives reaching the total count for the rare gems. And this was just based off of a weekend versus the last over 10 years. So the rarity for these things is down quite a bit. And this is really weird because this was thought to have never happened and never could happen within CS. But obviously because it's Valve, well, anything can happen. And my second point in thought to this question is I feel like this case release that was actually never really thought to come because it's been so long since we first saw the Danger Zone knives inside CS. This actually helped a lot of players understand Valve's timeline, specifically when it comes to updates. And what this boils down to is that the devs want to spread out big releases for golds, specifically for situations like this, and they want to have them spread out for as far out as possible. So if we get a new knife, a bunch of new knives, we're going to get the original vanilla finishes. It could take 5, 6, 7, 10 years for the chroma finishes to release for them. Long story short, Valve wants to make the hype last a lot longer than it typically would for anything else, because they could have dropped this still back in CSGO, but they never did. Not to mention with the first case release for CS2. And I know a lot of players and viewers for my videos, not to mention all of social media and players who just play Counter-Strike, feel like after this update, an operation couldn't really feel further away, because this update was thought to be a big content drop, not just a microtransaction, an Armory Pass 2 update. That's what it was, but we'll discuss more about that later. And my last thought for this question / overall update is I feel like we have to point out the fact that Valve made millions from this case just alone over the course of one single weekend. And for how much they made specifically, from many big news articles within the CS scene, they have stated that Valve reportedly made $82 million from cases alone in March. And in normal months, this typically ranges from 15 to 20, maybe 30 million. With the release of CS2, it was obviously double, triple than that, but that was due to the hype. That wasn't due to anything new. With this, that's just pretty crazy. But it also shows players, well, just that they're in love with skins, they want to make some profit, and they're obviously not voting with their wallet, which makes Valve absolutely love them, not to mention they see that players are enjoying more skins than they are content. But the hard thing with that is they're not releasing any content for players to buy, more so just microtransactions. And for some big reasons why there were so many Fever cases unboxed so soon after the release is, well, we don't have it normally in the typical drop system, and well, we have it with the Armory Pass. And since stars and passes don't expire, hypothetically, you could have farmed up towards 10,000 stars last season, and those could have been transferred over to the past season too. And then people use those stars to buy the new case, either they unbox them or sell them on the market, which obviously it looks like most players ended up just taking the quick route where they unbox them. Let me know what you guys think down below. This update was very weird, and for a lot of people, it was a big letdown. But I guess the good thing is that we got some new skins, got some new knives, which players seem to love. Now, our next question up here is interesting because it's in regards to Counter-Strike's future updates. This guy says, is there a potential we will only get these minor updates for the foreseeable future? For example, premiere map changes, armory changes, new case, etc. Or do you believe that we will get new content updates like new game modes and operation style missions, etc.? So really right now, for the foreseeable future, I don't really see anything outside the realm of just minor bug fixes, that being tweaks to the game, this most recent update in regards to skins, and that's really it for the foreseeable future. But how long do I mean foreseeable future? Well, I mean now really until mid to late summer. Let me explain. You see, after this spring update that Valve just released for CS2, I think most players as of right now can agree the future of CS feels weird, feels off. For example, I enjoyed skins, I still do now, that's now all the game really has come to offer. I think as of right now, and just, well, updates updates going forward, it's time for something big, which is why most players think, aside from leaks through data mines that we have had for CS2, that something is coming soon. But very similar to the question about my thoughts regarding the Fever Case update, Valve wants to milk as much as possible, not to mention spread what they already have out before releasing anything new, which is exactly what they're doing here. A lot of the time people jump to conclusions saying that Valve is working on something new, they're cooking, let them be. But I think in reality, what it comes down to is the devs really aren't. They're doing the bare minimum to keep CS2 alive, keep it afloat, making money, while also making some players happy. We'll touch on this a little further in today's video, including the next question, but because we have the major coming up in just the next couple of months, we may not see anything close to mid or late summer. That's a big release anyway. But over the last year, Valve has proven time and time again that couldn't be further from the truth in some instances. Let me know what you guys think about that one down below. Our last question up here for today's episode of Mando Monday is pretty interesting, and it's one I've never really seen before for CS, not to mention my channel. This guy starts off by saying it feels like as if Valve wants to do nothing. A lot of things are possible, yet we still wait quite a while. So the real question is how to cope until they update the game. And to start things off, I want to say that you're not alone in feeling the game is very stale right now, or for some has felt extremely stale since the day CS2 came out. I wanted to go over that because you're not insane to think that. In regards to new gameplay content, things that innovate and change the franchise, change the game, that's not to do with skins. We haven't really seen anything since the days of CSGO. Now I know yourself and a lot of people, including myself, are not running some sort of new mode or new movement change that involves wall running or something crazy, but at this point I feel like it's just the necessities. It's the bare essentials that you need to keep the game afloat. But with that being said, I do want to give some reminders for what Counter-Strike is and to help a lot of people cope until the next major update. I know the franchise since the dawn of CS2's release has been pretty weird and some may say stale, but Counter-Strike as of right now, guess what, is still Counter-Strike, and that is not going to be changing anytime soon. It's the biggest FPS esport in the entire world with millions of monthly players, which it seems like the last couple of months, it seems like it's continuing to hit a new all-time high every single month. So the game is growing in player count. A game this size, not to mention really any game, can just disappear or go off the face of the earth. That's unless Valve did something very bad, something to upset players, or cuts a lot of players just out of the picture entirely. This for some may sound a little controversial, but I believe it's true. The things we want fixed and eventually added to CS2 will eventually come within reason. As of right now, it's a matter of timing and not a question of when, meaning we are going to get a new anti-cheat. We are going to get an operation or something at least like it, specifically with the co-op missions and actual gameplay side of things. Valve is going to improve subtick as they have this last year. That's just a little bit of proof. I think behind the scenes and just with CS2 overall, there's a lot of moving parts that we don't really know about as players, which is why we also could be seeing such a delay with major bits of content. And also, like we discussed in today's video, Valve wants to milk as much as they can, and when they release something, for an example, if they release a brand new case with a new knife, they want to stretch those golds out for as long as possible before adding anything brand new. Same thing goes with content. We do have to remember CS2, yes, isn't really a new game, but it is on a new engine, and that technically speaking is new content, just not the type we want. Let me know what you guys think about that one down below, not to mention the entire episode of Mando Monday. I know CS2 as of right now in terms of content, gameplay, and things to do isn't really in the best spot, but the game is growing. It's the most played game on Steam. Valve is still active to a degree, and that's not going to be changing or disappearing anytime soon. With that being said, if you guys have any questions in regards to Mando Monday for next week's video, leave them down below this comment section or any of my community posts. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Stay positive, sexy. I'm out, guys. Peace.